Namaste and welcome to a very special episode of the Vaishali Dialogues. I have with me three very special gentlemen. I call them the boisterous boys of the Hindu-leaning space of the internet. You will have, I'm sure, have seen them on YouTube, and they spread their message on Sanatan Dharma in their own unique ways. I'm very thrilled to have with me today Sham Sharma ji, namaste. Kushal Mehra Abhijit, namaste, and Abhijit Iyer-Mitra ji, namaste. So happy to have all of you on board today. And as they say, three is company, four, I hope is not going to be a crowd. So I hope to look forward to having a good, nice, engaging.
If we have a problem, we'll throw Abhijit out.
Yeah.
If you have a problem, it's my cats. They're just running around causing havoc around here. So if you see
so
the background move,
might need to kick him out.
or if the electricity goes off.
I've seen a dog a couple of times.
Yeah, I have two dogs and now I have two cats as well. And unfortunately, because the cats were raised by the dogs, they get along great. The problem, of course, is that when you raise cats as dogs, then they're as rowdy as dogs, except they can climb to places where dogs can't. So it's like not very nice. Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to get down to serious business now, and I have a couple of questions right here with me. I actually prepared for the show.
Oh, no way.
So,
that's a lot more than we do.
So I'm going to start with a little bit, I think like a intro session, because I think a lot of our subscribers, viewers would like to know a little bit about each one of you. So Shamji, let me start with you because you're in the US. And how did Sham Sharma show begin? It's quite an alliterative name.
Yeah, that was the idea behind it.
Yeah. What is
It basically began like a lot of, sort of right-leaning Indian content began. There was just such a dearth of content which, presents the side of the story of which is not necessarily left-leaning, which is not heavily left-wing. There wasn't any content available back when I was watching YouTube, or even like I wasn't really watching TV that much after like 2012 or something. But after that, I got on YouTube. And on YouTube, there was basically zero content like that available. And for the longest time, I kept thinking about, kaun banayega, who's going to make that kind of content? And then eventually I was like, well, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of either A, content out there, or B, if there's content out there, it's not the kind of content that I want to see. And so eventually I just decided, you know what, let me just put my mug in front of a camera and let's see if people want to listen to that, if people want to see that. And somehow I've managed to swindle a bunch of people into thinking that I have something meaningful to say, but that's essentially how it started.
Okay, nice. Which year was it?
I started in 2018.
2018. Yeah. And then of course, COVID was right around the corner and that kind of helped matters along, I think.
Yeah, I feel like more than the content that the short form content that I make on the main channel, that's done pretty well on itself, but it did help the podcasting space, especially the podcast that the three of us make. That I think during COVID times it really connected with people. We got a lot of messages. We still do, and Kushal shares them routinely on social media about how people often tell us that, it's just the Thursday podcast that you guys do is just a bright spark in my day. It's a great way to like decompress, laugh a little bit, and then learn some information as well.
Wonderful. Kushanji, Charvaka podcast. So Charvaka is apparently they were materialists, right? The Charvaka philosophy is that of materialism, and they rejected the supremacy of the Vedas and all of that. So is your philosophy also, personal philosophy also leaning towards Charvakism, if I may call it that? Or what's the secret behind the name of your podcast?
Well, I was always attracted to materialistic tendencies. I mean, I've been a materialist for a good 21 years now, for pretty much. But how I came across Charvak was by accident. I was reading Astika literature, and then so I only found out about Charvaks when Astikas tend to lampoon the Charvak literature because we don't have any primary Charvak sources. So that's how I came across. And when I read it, I was like, this sounds interesting. And I was never very comfortable with the atheist tag. I mean, I had a very typical journey of, going through that. These are the four horsemen: Dawkins, Hitchens, Dennett, and all those Sam Harris. And then I realized that, these people are too angry and I'm not that angry. So I'm clearly not like them.
Yes.
And so I started reading more, and then do I agree with everything the old Charvakas say? No, it's impossible. The old Charvakas were at least 3,000 years ago. So people have changed. Yeah. So that's a era that is gone. And secondly, I really don't know what their primary views are in that sense. So I can't say that I am exactly like them, but I do share many of their premises. Like questioning the supremacy of the Vedas would be one thing. When I say supremacy of the Vedas, as in they are not infallible. In my view, I can question the Vedas, and I should be allowed to question the Vedas. So that would be my thing. But then at the same time, I would take anything good that comes out of any Astika literature. So in fact, the primary influence of my life is the Bhagavad Gita more than Charvaka literature. So in that sense, that binary created is unfair in my view, because every other darshan in India has been allowed to kind of upgrade themselves and change their point of view, but the Charvakas are supposed to be just like how Sarva Darshan Sangraha by Madhav Vidyaranya wrote in that time, or how it was written at that time. तुमको वैसे ही behave करना पड़ेगा, तुमको allowed नहीं upgrade करना, बाकी सब upgrade करने allowed है.
वैसे ही रहना तो अगर if you want to be a materialist.
Yeah, so that's the thing.
But you're right. There isn't too much literature on the Charvaka philosophy. No commentaries, as far as I know.
Not more than 200 pages.
Wow, that's teeny tiny.
Yeah.
Okay. On to you, Abhijit ji. You're something of a lone wolf. We know you're a defense analyst and you are everywhere.
Hey, you are everywhere. I like that.
You are everywhere. That's a good one.
As in, well, I think he's the go-to person for anything to do with it.
That's going to be Abhijit's new description in our podcast.
He's everywhere.
Yeah.
See, I'm Trilokdarshi, Antaryami, all of that. I am all-seeing, omniscient, omnipresent.
Lovely.
That's
I
it.
know two things about you. I know that you consider yourself fairer than Kushal, and you don't like Iyengars for some reason. Can you actually weigh in on that? I would love to hear your thoughts on it.
So, see, I don't consider myself a defense analyst. I consider myself a dancer for peace. Because what happened was when I got back from Australia to India to do some serious policy analysis, I met this colleague of mine who was doing a Erasmus scholarship in Spain. That was the EU scholarships for foreign students in Europe. And she was at this university in Spain doing peace through art.
Wow.
And so I decided, because I was incredibly talented at dancing, I would also try to achieve peace through dance. And then what happened was I switched to a think tank called ORF, the Observer Research Foundation, where, my boss, Samir Saran, was extremely impressed with my dancing. And he encouraged me to pursue it. And what he said was, Abhijit, I'm so moved and touched by your peace through dance. I don't want you to focus just on defense. You'll understand more about defense if you actually understand education policy, nutrition policy, and things like that. So for the first year, he refused to let me do defense, and he wanted me to do all these other things, which he was so right about it. Because, when you understand how everything else impacts defense, then you actually begin to understand why things are going wrong, or you begin to see patterns and things like that. So, he kind of, if I started off just doing peace through dance, he kind of encouraged me to get into everything through dance.
And dance is I'm fascinated.
Oh, I do dances all over. I dance at Konark Sun Temple. I've danced at...
I don't know if you saw that performance at the EU. I don't know if you saw the recent performance at EU. That was also coached by
the
Abhijit.
interpretive dance,
Yeah.
And I've danced. Yeah, I've danced at the tomb of Babur in Kabul. I've danced at the tomb of Tamerlane in Samarkand. So, I achieved these through dance. And in all of this, I realized there was the global Iyengar conspiracy, which was attempting to, it was, you've heard of the Illuminati, but the Iyengars are over the Illuminati. So they've been trying to create global war and schism through the WTO and Klaus Schwab and people like that, and the World Economic Forum. Do you know the World Economic Forum is actually an Iyengar conspiracy too? Klaus Schwab is Iyengar, yes.
Wow.
Yes. So
Iyengar in the shape of a dog next to you?
No, that's a cat. Yes, they're both very naughty cats, but yes. But so I decided, but it's really something of a joke because all my friends are Iyengar. So it's just fantastic riling them up on everything under the sun.
The secret is out.
On a half serious note though, I've known Iyers and I've known Iyengars. I've had friends, both friends, both parties as friends. But I always found Iyengars to be quite fanatical.
But it's not just Iyengars. Have you noticed Vaishnava traditions are generally very... Yes, Vaishnavites everywhere. It's not just Iyengars. They tend to be a lot more regressive. Yes. They're much more fanatical.
And there's of Hinduism.
They are. And see, there's a reason for it. They're the monotheists, the Akhenautists of Hinduism in that sense. Because for them, it is only Vishnu and Lakshmi in a sense.
Yes.
And Lakshmi, that too, as an adjunct to Vishnu. As opposed to Smarthas who believe in everything.
Not a Shakti.
Right. So Smarthas believe in everything. We believe in Shiva, Vishnu, Brahma, everything. And in fact, if you say Shaivite, it's actually much more Shaktite than it is Shaivite. The male form is worshipped as the adjunct of the female form in that sense. Because in any Shaivite tradition, you will find a lot more veneration of the goddess than you will of the god. And, you won't exclude. So this is so one of the things semi-serious is that Vaishnavism tends towards a very almost monotheistic, not monotheistic maybe, but henotheistic, a fanatical henotheistic part. And purely as a semi-serious joke, but there's a kernel of truth to it. Vaishnavism fundamentally believes in Dvaita.
In Dvaita?
Dvaita, whereas we are Advaita.
Is Vishishta Dvaita again?
Most of them are Dvaitis. They're not even Visishta Dvaitis. So the thing out here is, so remember when an Iyengar dies, they go up to Vaikuntha and they massage Vishnu's feet. Whereas when a Iyer dies, we become Vishnu himself. So my logic has always been that Iyengars might as well start massaging my feet here and now, rather than wait to die and come up to Vaikuntha.
Happen eventually.
Well, it'll happen eventually. So, see, Iyers are here and Iyengars are here. We need to understand that. Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, that was fun. So I think this is a natural adjunct to the question that I've already asked you. You are in your respective spaces, and then through Sham Sharma show, I think you come together and you have this very riotous time, and I've seen you people reviewing the memes and all of that. But on a serious note, in the Hindu, for want of a better phrase, Hindu right space right now, how do you align yourself? Where do you find yourself in that space? In that, are you're definitely not what people would call Hindutva, or you're not, BJP leaning or RSS leaning. I don't know, I'm struggling for the right words here, but where do you align yourself ideologically, if I could use that word, within the Hindu fold? Do I make sense?
Yeah. Who do you want to start?
Let's go in the same order. Sham, Kushal.
I'll go first. I like to think of myself as Hindutva. I align most strongly with the ideology of Hindutva. And I like to see Indian society also move towards Hindutva. I think maybe not as much BJP aligned, even though, BJP is basically the sort of only Hindutva game in town right now. So I suppose that makes me BJP adjacent by default. But primarily, if I had to align myself with an ideology, it would be Hindutva, definitely.
Yes.
Well,
Okay.
my case, I say I'm a political Hindu.
Political
And
Hindu. Okay.
yeah, in fact, I had recently done a long monologue on my podcast about to explain why I'm a political Hindu.
Ah.
So for me, it's very clear. I don't hide my leaning. I am an open BJP voter who says I sympathize with RSS. I criticize their economic policy, but I understand their social worldview. As far as the BJP is concerned, I have no other option. As they say in Hindi, nanga nahega kya, nichodega kya. So मेरे पास कोई option नहीं है, मैं जाके BJP को vote करता हूँ. So that's, but my personal identity, as you know, a lot of times people get confused. Like, you call yourself a Charvaka, then why do you call yourself a Hindu? Well, I am also as much part of this civilization and this culture. It's like, yeah, so my materialism did not get exported. It's not like Epicurus one day traveled to India and said, there is materialism. We existed way before him also. So that is also, if you are a civilizationalist, which I am, then you automatically associate with the civilizational raison d'etre.
Identity.
Yeah. And that's how I go into that camp. So people
you say,
get
Kushal,
confused.
that aligns with sort of the Hindutva ideology, because that's what that ideology espouses too, right?
Yeah. So that would be my answer. So I will find mistakes in BJP, in RSS, in current political discourse in many ways. But that doesn't change the fact that if I put all my chips on the table and I look at the larger picture, I know where I'm going. It doesn't mean that I'm this or that. I can be wherever I want to. Personally, I'm a fierce individualist. I lean very libertarian in my personal thought. I just like to be left alone. That's my thing most of the time. But at the same time, I understand why India is a civilizational state and why, for this country and this culture to survive, we need a political response. And I think that political Hinduism is the only way forward, at least in my understanding, for the future.
Wonderful. You're right. I mean, just because you're an individualist, just because you have your own views about certain things, or a libertarian for that matter, doesn't make you a non-Hindu. A lot of people don't understand that. I think a lot of people need to still come around to that point of view, that just because, if you're Hindu, then you need to be a very pious. You can also be that. That's the beauty of it, right? You can be this and you can be that. Coming to you, Abhijit ji, what about you?
So, I started off as a hardcore communist. Yeah. So I wanted to join the KGB as a kid. I hated the American global empire. I wanted global revolution and whatnot. And, invariably what happened was puberty set in and I grew up. So I kind of turned to the right once I grew up.
And you took to dance.
And I took to dance as well. So what happens is that it was just one of those things where when you get rid of the mumbo jumbo and the jargon, when you focus on the bare essentials, you find that conservative economics is just much more grounded in reality than hope-based left-wing economics. See, it sounds very good. It ticks all the boxes. It's very touchy-feely, but it's a disaster in real life. There's a reason that even before communism was invented, they said that the path to hell is paved with good intentions. If you condense that into one word, it's called socialism. So, it's kind of like that. So what happens is, it started off with the economic conservatism. And then what happened was, I was truly blessed in that, coming from being in a third world country, coming from an intercaste marriage with, multiple marriages of both my parents, and being gay, it was never an issue in India. It's like, what, you want an award or something? So, it's like, I thought I was special and I'm going to have this heroic stand against homophobia. And they're like, yeah. So everybody was like, yeah, okay, so what? So, it's like, it endears you to your own culture. Because, it's a very accepting, yes, are there bad aspects to it? Of course there are. Tell me one religion that doesn't have a bad aspect to it. But overall, the overwhelming majority of it is extremely accepting of whatever you do. Being weird in India is a good thing. I mean, you look at Mirabai, she's like...
how much more weird can you be, right? I mean,
how much more weird can you be? Right. I mean, how much... look at Krishna. Krishna is like the naughtiest. He's like Dennis the Menace on steroids, kind of, right? And his mother, there's that in Carnatic music, you have you have Krishnani Vegane Varo.
Yes,
and then you have, it's meant to be followed by Jagatodharana, when she opens the mouth and she sees the entire world inside. But she doesn't give a damn. She spanks him because she's his mother. You have that, you may be a god, but I'm your mother in this house. You listen to me, whack, 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 no stealing butter. Right. So you have a very playful, we're not a God-fearing people, we're a God-loving people.
Loving, yeah. And God questioning too. God questioning too.
And if you go to Kashi, if you go to Banaras, you look at the culture out there, Shiva is not this god to be feared. I have literally seen people go there and give galis to the god. Like even the sadhus out there will be khusre bosari ke. When they bless you, you touch their feet, they'll be khusre bosari ke. I have seen people go up to the temple and go abuse Shiva left, right and center, say, Haramzade, maine tere ko ye puja tha, tune mere ko nahi kiya, tu ye hai, tu wo hai. He is a family member out there.
Yes.
You don't, it's a very nice, it's a sort of warm.
Well, there's a culture of Ninda Stutis also, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Ninda Stutis, where they criticize and they literally chide the deity.
Which you're meant to.
Yes.
It's part of the religion to do all of that. So, when I won't describe myself completely as a Charvak, because, for me, even Nastika takes its validation in the Hindu system from the Vedas. So you look at the Nasadiya Shukta, that is where, it's, for me, the Rig Veda has always been our Treaty of Westphalia, right? Where we came together, they signed the Treaty of Westphalia in 1640 something. We signed it about 3000 BC, where we decided, we're accommodating all of you. It starts off with the War of the 10 Kings, where you go to war because some tribe amongst you isn't even reciting the shlokas properly. And you end with, is there even a God? So, you're accepted that each weirdo has his right to be weird, and you can do whatever you want. It's for me, Hinduism is really a state of mind, but I am very much a Hindutvavadi, because the two things about Hindutva, one is the ending of social discrimination. And the second is creating a political unit, a political advocacy unit for that Hindu, for all the weirdos of the world, is a very, very good thing. Right? So like Kushal, I can't stand their economic platform. But if you notice, I never criticize the RSS. I'll keep abusing the BJP, but see, the BJP wants my vote. Therefore, I can spit on you. The RSS has never asked me for anything. They only serve.
Correct.
So if they don't ask you for anything, you don't have the right to criticize them. You help them where you can, and that's about it.
Very true. Very true.
I would just like to add something over here. Sometimes people wonder what binds all three of us, because we are clearly very different, distinct people. And I'll tell you what binds all three of us. What binds three of us is this love for our society. That's what, because we have very different personalities. As you can see, Abhijit can dance a little bit, but we cannot.
Clearly a fascinating dancer.
Yes. But so the one common thing all three of us have is, which we figured out in the long run, is all of us are vehemently anti-casteism. That's the common resident. Like all of us, we hate it with a passion. Like it comes out very strongly in all three of us. And that's
there's
what
been a lot of discussion on casteism and also a lot of it's not rationalization, but also a lot of literature that talks about, I'm sure you're familiar with this, with the kind of, how it became congealed in the society over the years, but it wasn't inflexible necessarily, and it's not what it has become, certainly. So I don't think it was really flawed in the way it was conceived, but has probably become more or less a very, very
I mean, that's the part that we're disagreeing with. We're not, we are seeing what exists in front of us right now. We can only fight what exists in front of us right now.
correct.
And if there are certain problems in our, like Kushal said, we came together, and the reason we get along with each other so well is because we have this very deep-seated love for the civilization, and all three of us want to do whatever we can to preserve it. And in my case specifically, I'm sure the other two will probably agree as well, but in my case specifically, I want to export it. I want to grow it. I want to convert non-Indians into Sanatana Dharma. That's my goal. Before I die, I want to convert at least 500,000 people into Sanatana Dharma.
Wonderful.
So,
Yes, cheers to that.
because I believe that this is a philosophy that people can get a lot of good out of. So that's why we criticize when we see the problems. Whatever problems exist in front of us,
They
fine.
need to be
Jo
fixed.
pehle tha, that's a little immaterial at this moment. We're just trying to criticize the realities that exist in front of us.
Very true.
Right. And the other thing, of course, is that, what you say is right. It was never even at any given point of time. At every given point of time where you can show me extreme casteism, I can show you a complete counterexample to that. Okay. But the problem is the casteist brigade would take that counterexample as the norm and the casteism to be the exception. Whereas modern Hinduism shows you that it was probably the norm. Yes, we've had Shudra kings. I think one of the Deccan kingdoms were very proud of the fact. I forget which ones. Was it the?
You have the Reddy kings, right? Now Reddys are not necessarily like the Reddy.
No. But you had Shudra kings. One of them, I forget which dynasty, was very, very proud of the fact that they were Shudras. They trumpeted it all over, right? So there's heaps of counterexamples, but that's not the point. The point is that today, if you think that your birth confers on you certain privileges and rights, which is purely a byproduct, I mean, we're all byproducts of copulation. And if you think copulation has conferred certain rights upon you, as opposed to your gunas, your brain, your work ethic, all of that.
You have to, I mean, if you're it's by adhikara. Adhikara doesn't come by birth, it's by your practice, right?
It is by your practice. So it is by the practices you do and the choices that you make. And it is that which determines the value of a human. So in that sense, as much as I do not like the Arya Samajis for a lot of what they did in Punjab, it's one part of the Sikh-Hindu split is what the Arya Samajis ended up doing. But, I do believe in going back to that period where your caste was determined by your actions and your choices and your abilities, but also where we've reached an industrial modernity where having that distinction is counterproductive. Because I learned most of problem solving doing hospitality, which parts of hospitality would be considered a Shudra job, like cleaning toilets in 5-star hotels is a Shudra job, right? Cooking may be a Brahmin job because, Brahmin will only eat what a Brahmin cooks, kind of. There's all that crap that goes on there. So I did that entire spectrum, but it teaches you how to problem solve a lot. Not in India, maybe, because in India, you just get the customer to scream. You don't actually solve the customer problems. But in a first world country where labor is very expensive, you are authorized to solve problems. So the management tells you to solve that problem with the customer right there. They empower you to do that. And it was a much easier way of learning problem solving, which then I started applying to everything else. So for me personally, cleaning toilets led to personal growth, right? So how am I meant to ever agree that a toilet cleaner today can't be a person of intellect tomorrow. So that cross-pollination is extremely important. I think in India, we've lost a lot of dignity of labor. We need to bring that dignity of labor back in.
I agree. True, very true. As far as shifting and changing the narrative is concerned, and I think that's pretty much what I think all of you are trying to do, and many other such fora, or shows like yours are trying to do online. Do you think that they are making a dent, though, in shifting the narrative? If so, to what extent? What has been your personal experience? And do you think these shows online, YouTube, etc., have made the mainstream media irrelevant? As far as news or opinions are concerned, or seeking opinions are concerned.
I mean, I can talk about the YouTube space. I definitely do think it's made a dent, and it's making a dent as we speak as well. I think online content played a huge part. I don't think it can be underplayed what a big part it played, social media, in the BJP's victory in 2014. And again, in 2019 as well. If social media was not around, and if we were only relying on mainstream sources to get our news from, I don't think BJP either A, wins, or wins with the margin that it did win. I definitely think it makes a big dent. If you look at the big mainstream channels that are popular right now as well in terms of news, you look at Times Now, you look at Republic, you can make a good case that both of those channels are right-leaning. And it has happened because all of these mainstream news channels have noticed, people like Republic and Times Now, that look at YouTube, look at what people are watching on YouTube, look at how many now, channels and shows, etc., whatever podcasts there are. And there is clearly a gap in the mainstream media market that the audience is looking for. So instead of mainstream media, they're going to YouTube. So we need to fill that gap. And that's basically what Arnab Goswami did, whether you like him or you dislike him. You have to give him kudos for realizing that there was a gap in the market, and he filled that gap. And now look how well Republic is doing. So it definitely has made a dent. There was definitely a great amount of hunger among the Indian audience for content like this. And the result of content like this is, like I said, channels like Republic TV. You have Kushal made a very good point on the podcast a couple of weeks ago that films like the Kashmir Files, they don't get made if this environment wasn't previously created. If the BJP was not in power, if these kinds of shows were not there, a film like Kashmir Files maybe doesn't get made. If it gets made, it doesn't become as wildly popular as it became in 2022. You can make the same case with the books that are coming out. Vikram Sampat's book, Jesai Deepak's book, all of these scholarly work that's also coming out. I think it's come out because an environment has been created by social media accounts, by YouTube shows, by podcasts like Kushal's, by people like Abhijit, where the ground is extremely fertile for these kinds of endeavors to become successful. So yeah, I definitely think it's made a big mark, and I still think there's a lot of room to grow. And the Western right wing, whether there's a lot that all three of us disagree very strongly with the Western right wing, but I think they have created a pathway which would give the Indian right wing, dharmic wing, whatever you want to call it, a lot of ideas as to how to grow further.
Correct.
And also to add quickly to that, remember when Arnab left Times Now to create Republic, he didn't cannibalize market share. He actually expanded the market share. It went from Times Now having 40% of the market to Arnab taking away another 40% of the market. So maybe Times Now came down to about 35, but 40. And so, it became 75% right wing. And then 15% was that Aaj Tak India Today. And all the left wing, and India Today is like, some days it's here, odd even. And the remaining 5 to 7% had to be split by all the left wing. They are completely inconsequential in terms of viewership, though they are, in terms of academic quoting and literature, they are completely dominant to the point of 99.9999%.
Yes.
So I think mainstream media still has a huge role to play. What has happened is, what YouTube provided was that there were many things that people did not hear. So when, as they say, nature abhors vacuum, and when you create a vacuum, if you then somebody is going to start speaking, and I think that content was there. So what the internet, whether it's YouTube or audio platforms like Spotify, etc., or for that matter, social media like Twitter or Facebook, what they did was that they basically provided a platform to many things that were not discussed.
Correct.
The reason I think Republic came, and now what has happened is, sometimes people on YouTube do respond to what Republic says or what Times Now says or what NDTV says. But nowadays, if you check, a lot of times they see what people are saying and they pick it up and they start,
Correct.
running with it and speaking about it.
The other way now, yeah.
Yeah. So what has happened essentially is, no, I'll give you an example of my own family. Like my parents, they were not YouTube consumers, but I have seen a distinctive shift in my parents' consumption patterns. They still watch news. Let me be very precise here. Like they'll have their 7 o'clock se lekar wo 10 baje tak ka spurts of news. But the rest of the day, they are randomly
on WhatsApp.
Yes.
My parents, I know, they're like constantly. All the links are coming on WhatsApp and they're watching this avidly.
Yeah. So the way the senior citizens have picked up on YouTube, like I get amazed. Like I don't know content creators. My father does. My father will tell me, "अरे तूने ये YouTube video बहुत अच्छे बनाता है, इसको सुना है, तू वो बनाता है, उसको सुना है." And my father consumes Hindi YouTube.
So you don't know about exactly.
Yeah, Hindi YouTube is like a huge world of its own, and people don't realize, like, English language has a very small audience in India. You get into the regional language space and their numbers, you get scared.
Yeah.
So it's just a different ball now. And imagine India at this scale, at this level right now. And imagine what's going to happen when we become a $10 trillion economy. You're going to have YouTube multimillionaires. You're going to have that. You will. In fact, YouTube is now, most of the revenue that YouTube is getting right now is slowly shifting towards the Asian market from the American market. They are slowly veering towards, because they realize this is the numbers are so huge in India.
Yes.
So it's a very interesting time. I think the content landscape, the reason this changed was primarily Modi won in 2014. And then what happens is, like Sham said, right? Kashmir Files banti kaise? So people get confidence. Okay, ye wapis jeet gaya hai. Chal movie banate hain. So now you create that confidence level in people, and then you have YouTubers popping up out of nowhere, and they have millions of views, and it's amazing. It has completely smashed the left-wing narrative.
I think you're right. I mean, sometimes one likes to kind of step back and see. I'm sure it has, like you rightly pointed out, Sham ji, that 2014 wouldn't have happened, and then again 2019 wouldn't have happened if it weren't for this content, this alternative content, for sure. And the internet Hindus, as they were called, I think in the initial days, the warriors. So I think they really did help, and I think earlier on, many of us would look down, turn our noses down at this kind of media, but I think slowly people are waking up, and not just slowly, I think quite rapidly, people are beginning to realize the importance and the force of this medium. Abhijit ji, what do you want to weigh in over here and say something?
I've always been a big fan of the democratization of information. What you've seen is essentially an end to digital feudalism. We lived in essentially what was digital feudalism, where you had these Thakur, wo Sholay mein bahut famous line kya hai that Thakur gives?
Thakur gives or Gabbar gives?
Gabbar. क्या
ये हाथ मुझे दे दे ठाकुर.
ये हाथ मुझे दे दे वाला.
नहीं, कुछ और है. I think it's Thakur that gives the line. Thakur क्या line देता है?
कब है होली? I don't know.
No, but it's anyway. The thing is, that we moved away from there to literally everyone being able to put out his or her opinion on YouTube and get viewers. Now, it doesn't matter what gets the highest number of views or not. Okay, so for example, everybody will talk about Dhruv Rathi, who, and I don't begrudge him his success, even though I think he talks rubbish, but nobody will talk about Sandeep Maheshwari, who has something like 22 million followers. Dhruv Rathi has 3 million followers. But Dhruv Rathi is considered the greatest political phenomenon to come out of India after Prashant Kishore. But Sandeep Maheshwari, who has 22 million followers, is not. Why not? Right. So there's, you see the outright hypocrisy of these things. You see how narratives are being created. And I don't care. I mean, you can come up with your own YouTube channel claiming that every great monument built before the industrial age was built by aliens and things like that. Aliens built the pyramids, aliens built the Brihadishwara temple, aliens built Angkor Wat or whatever. Yeah. No, it was built by aliens from Jupiter. You don't know this. Yeah. So, they did scientific analysis and they found that the 80-ton capstone of the Brihadishwara temple was actually formed in Jupiter's gaseous atmosphere. Yeah. So it's not known, but I'm telling you this. It's very special knowledge that I'm sharing with all of you. But see, you can have channels like that. I don't care if it's misinformation, disinformation, whatever, because ultimately, when you crack down on misinformation, disinformation, you're assuming that a person doesn't have the mental faculties to do that for themselves. You're infantilizing a whole population, right? Which is what editors used to do.
They used to what is right and what is
exactly. Wrong. So, there is this concerted attempt to re-feudalize this thing. It's like the age of enlightenment in Europe, where the Martin Luther's sort of Protestant Reformation also led to peasant uprisings, which ultimately were crushed by the nobles, kind of thing. I'm hoping this particular peasant uprising does not get crushed. But it is one of those pivotal moments where you need to have that sort of devolution of powers. Now, they all talk about devolution. They talk about federalism. They want regional rights, federal rights. Federalism is democracy. Centralization is autocracy. Except with your opinions, where you're not allowed to devolve powers.
Except where?
With your opinions. And with information, where you're not allowed to devolve powers. So see, this is, but I'm glad because, they get exposed so badly. It's not even funny. So it's good.
And if I can just add something to that, Pujitaji, what I noticed is that I think what sets at least our show and, us in our individual capacities as well apart is that, like Abhijit said, we support the democratization of this information. And at the same time, you'll notice from the left wing, and unfortunately, we have to be honest, this problem exists in the non-left as well. But we have never, ever told anyone that, what you're saying is wrong, so you need to be stopped. This is not something that we ever endorse or ever support, that we will go on our podcast and we will say, "Arey, ye aadmi bevkoof hai." We will use the C word. We will use all kinds of wonderful epithets, but we will never say that this person needs to be shut down because so-and-so is spreading misinformation. We will answer your misinformation with the correct information on our end. And I think that is something that I am very proud of on my show. We get a lot of brickbats for it from our audience sometimes, but I think we, as long as we're doing the show, we'll always stick to our guns, and it does really set us apart that we're not. You'll see so many channels that are shut down by certain people whose fans are like mass reporting it, or they're sending, they're using their big management companies on YouTube to like report this channel and get it shut down by YouTube or get it shut down by Twitter and things like that. Never been our game plan. That has never even occurred to us. And unless you're calling for overt, outright violence against certain people, we will never ask you to shut up.
Correct, correct. Yes, democratization of space, of the information space. I agree. Everybody should have their voice heard. Okay, so speaking of narratives and narrative building, movies have played a big role. And so speaking of movies, Netflix, Bollywood, Woke, all of that. That's one end of the spectrum. And then you have movies like Pushpa and Bahubali and RRR, which are suddenly like breaking all records. What's interesting is they're doing so not just in the South, but in the Hindi-speaking belt. So what gives? What's happening here?
I think what has happened, there's a trade analyst, Taran Adarsh, he made a very interesting point in one of his interviews. He was asked the same question. And he said, what happened with Bollywood is that Bollywood basically became as big as it did by catering to the mass market, by catering to the small town market. And then when it became massive, it started thinking that we're now too good for the mass market. We're too intellectual for those small town idiots, So we're not going to cater to the small town idiots anymore. We're going to cater to the intellectuals that live in South Delhi and South Bombay. And we're going to basically make movies that they can relate to.
Right.
There's a movie trailer that came out recently called The Archies.
Archies, I just saw that. Yes, I saw
exactly. And it's about a bunch of rich kids in the 60s. Yes. Where nobody in India bloody dressed like that or had parties. I don't know. Maybe they did, but
no, they did not.
I think it's a safe bet to say that a vast majority of Indians will not be able to relate to that film, as opposed to a film like RRR, as opposed to a film like Pushpa, as opposed to a film like Bahubali, that directly speaks to that very same market that Bollywood has abandoned and left. And so the South films was like, "ठीक है, आपको नहीं cater करना उस market को, no worries. We will cater to that market. We will provide those paisa vasool films that you go watch, आप सीटी बजाइए, आप सीट पे खड़े होके dance कीजिए, you have a great time, and at the same time you don't feel like you're being talked down to or your culture is being attacked. Ulta, it's being celebrated." So the South is giving the Indian audience, the mainstream Indian audience, which is the small town audience, exactly what they've been wanting from Bollywood, but Bollywood now thinks
they're not being condescended upon.
Bollywood now thinks it's too good for that market.
Correct. No, because the thing is that I've seen RRR, I've seen Bahubali, and I saw Pushpa. All three films, as a person who has a certain taste in films, I have to say I didn't like any of the three movies, but RRR was, what can I say? But I think the redeeming quality of these movies. If I were to ask you, what have you seen the movies though? Can I ask you each one?
I've seen Bahubali.
I haven't seen Pushpa, but I've seen the rest.
Yeah. I've seen Bahubali. That's it.
Okay, you've seen Bahubali. What about you, Abhijit?
I've tried to watch all of them unsuccessfully. Yes, I'm not a particularly big fan of vernacular. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. We're very what's the word? La-di-la.
So see, I only watch one kind of movie, right? It's sci-fi and horror. So yeah. So I would have watched almost every Hindi horror movie that's come out, or Tamil, literally Ramsay Brothers. So for a long time, the ringtone on my phone was that Z horror show.
Oh my God! What was it called?
So the Z horror show. So it was that tune on my phone. So it's not really I hate romance and comedy. I just find it boring sitting through this kind of crap. So I basically watch things where lots of people have to die. So I watched Gangs of Wasipur, Mirzapur, Raktanchal, and series like that, which is, it's like just realistically people killing each other, chopping each other's genitals off, cutting each other's heads off, like good fun stuff like that, healthy all-round entertainment, not this kissy smoochy holding each other's hands and running around trees and doing coochie smoochy, poochie poochie poo. No.
That's not healthy. That's not healthy at all.
Yeah. And in Bahubali, again, I found the graphics to be less than optimal. So I was like,
Yes.
okay, I'm watching. When is this going to get over? It was like 300 Spartans. Do you remember the original 300 Spartans that came out?
Exactly.
Everybody went gaga over it. I found it a dreadful, unwatchable movie because the graphics were just so bad.
Below
Right?
par.
They were subpar. Bahubali, again, completely subpar graphics. So I have huge problems with that. And my pet hate. So one of the reasons I don't watch Godzilla movies is because when you work in nuclear, you understand exactly how nuclear radiation works, how nuclear weapons work. And so constantly when you watch a movie to do with nuclear weapons or nuclear radiation, you're like, you realize what you just said was complete bullshit. You know, that's so not how nuclear weapons are transported. That's so now not how nuclear
My
weapons
God, that's
are
why
armed.
they're movies, you nerd. What are you talking
Yeah,
about?
but I can't get over it. See, it's just like me being in hospitality. Every time I go to a restaurant, I'm like, did you just serve me from the right? You're meant to serve me from my left, because you know if you're serving somebody like this, there is the danger that you'll knock them in the face. There's a specific way of serving. You know, you are the forks and knives and spoons placed properly? Or if you're serving a thali, or if it's an Indian buffet, have you placed the rice first? They'll always place the rice at the end. And you're like, who the hell does that? If you're going to a 5-star Indian buffet, I'm like, I don't want meat with bones in it. Otherwise, I'm going to eat with my hands. And don't come and complain about it.
But the Indian way is, so you see, in the Indian tradition, you never serve the rice first, ever. You should know that, Abhijit ji.
Yeah, no. But see, the thing is, in a buffet, it's different. You have to have the rice first so that you can put everything around it and over it, because in the way it's not served rice first, the rice is served somewhere in between, is because you take everything with your hand and
yes, and then you mix it. Correct.
Here, I'm not using my hands. I'm expected to use a fork and knife.
Correct.
How am I going to mix it like that? Right. So it's an application of mind. So my thing about movies in India has always been, there's very few substantial movies that come out. And that for me has always been problematic, that most Indian movies, it doesn't matter, Tamil, Telugu, Hindi, whatever, they essentially give you the same story over and over and over again with different characters. It's always a love story where the boy gets the girl, or the boy and the girl die, or the boy dies or the girl dies. The clothes are different, the setting is different, the names are different, the actors are different. And for me, that's an artistically ossified culture.
Correct. I all agree on that. My only question is, why has the Hindu fold taken such a warm, even in up north, I find a lot of people warming up to even a movie like RRR and talking about it very enthusiastically. So is the redeeming feature of
because the cultural zeitgeist has shifted? It's very simple.
Exactly.
Culture, I know mostly politics is downstream from culture, but usually that is the rule. But sometimes culture affects the politics of the country, and in this occasion the ulta has happened. Politics has affected the culture of this country. Now when people feel safe, they want, and see, you have to understand, most people don't go to a cinema to analyze things. People go to a cinema to basically have a good time, eat a nice samosa in the interval, have some popcorn, drink some Coke, and basically burden themselves with unhealthy things, and then suspend their imagination to another level, and they have a good time. And see, Salman Khan makes atrocious movies, in my personal opinion.
Oh, yes.
But have you seen the kind of numbers they do? The point is, it's suspension of belief. People like it. People enjoy it. Now, why do they like it? I don't know. Like I have always...
Kushal, just think about it this way. Look at Marvel movies.
Yeah.
Marvel movies are basic, the
Correct.
most basic bubblegum plots that you can ever imagine. But
they
they're
work.
doing $1 billion of business. Why? Because people want to go to most people, let me rephrase, want to go to a movie theater to be entertained.
Yes, they want entertainment, and RRR is entertainment. Bahubali was entertainment, and entertainment without being condescending. What else can you want?
Correct.
See,
Correct.
Bollywood's problem has become this.
Mm.
There are, check the movies that do well, which are in Hindi cinema, Bollywood so-called. Uri, again, does not condescend, celebrates
Which
culture.
one?
Uri jo thi.
There was a condescending element in that. I mean, I may have missed it.
No. There isn't. That's my whole point. There was no.
Yes.
There isn't. Or Kashmir Files or many others that come. Basically, the moment a picture comes that just says, हाँ हमें problems हैं मगर इतने भी बुरे नहीं हो, चलो enjoy कर लो. अरे, you don't want to go to a movie where somebody comes, ओए useless इंसान, मर जा उधर कोने में बैठ जा, क्यों पैदा हो गया तू, बस तेरे में ही सारी खामियां हैं. तो बोलेगा अबे मेरे को घर में सुबह से लेकर शाम तक भी वही सुनाते रहते लोग, इधर आए हो तू भी वही सुना रहा, नहीं आता तेरे पास. It's like that. It's not rocket science. Secondly, I think what has happened with Bollywood is, which is something that was explained to me by a Bollywood insider, was that Bollywood was changed fundamentally from Karan Johar times is because they realized there is an overseas market and the money, bang for the buck. So let's say हमारे यहाँ average ticket 100 रुपए 150 रुपए की होती है, मगर आप same जब diaspora audience को देते हो, and whether you like it or not, the diaspora Hindu is not the Indian Hindu. They are different.
Very different.
They want a certain movie. Now what has happened with Bollywood is they're like, मैं इतने लोगों को cater करूं, इससे अच्छा उनको cater करूं. But they took a bet. Now that bet has failed because now the Indian market by itself has become so big that now I'm telling you in the next 5 years, again, Bollywood will change because it's a market driven thing. They were imagine. आप एक पिक्चर करते हो, आप इंडिया में 50 करोड़, मैं आई एम जस्ट हाइपोथेटिकल बता रहा हूँ, 50 करोड़ का धंधा करते हो, ओवरसीज आप 200-300 करोड़ कमा लेते हो, आप किसको केटर करोगे? फिर so try and understand, see, it is not some grand conspiracy, not that these people are not left leaning. I am not trying to shill for them. My point is there is something called market economics also. So the southern cinema, I'm not saying they don't have an overseas market, they do. But which overseas market? They also have to, cater to a certain Hindi base. But look at the numbers they do outside India and they do inside India, and flip it around and look at the numbers of Bollywood doing outside India and inside India. And now Bollywood has learnt a lesson. आप just 4 साल देखना, 4 साल में कैसे फिर से ये लोग U-turn मार के वापस आएंगे.
Right.
What you'll also see.
Yes.
Sorry. What you'll also see is how, a lot of people in Hindi cinema are refusing to adjust to market reality. Thanks to Swara Bhaskar's political positions, she's not getting any new movies, is she? But she's still very committed to her political positions. When was the last time that these clown directors' movies actually sold? But they're using bigotry to whitewash their own lack of adjustment to the market. So, it's a bad tradesman who blames his tools for his work.
Correct.
It's a bad tradesman who blames his market for his work. So it's natural. Now, to add just one thing, I'd really recommend you go watch Gems of Bollywood on Twitter. Follow that handle.
Oh, yes.
You will find, I'm not a big fan of them, in how they see little subliminal messaging in everything. But you have to accept that there is just so much Hinduphobia in Hindi cinema, which is not tolerated anymore, which has changed very significantly. And that's a good thing, according to me. It's a mixed bag. I think we need to be much more tolerant of it. But then you also realize how ideological a lot of these nepotistic filmmakers were at one point of time.
Can I just add one thing over here? Swara Bhaskar losing her job gave us one of the best memes on the Sham Sharma show. So I'm actually very happy about it. There was that meme created where she was, saying like, "Ale kaam nahi milta hai aajkal." So I really appreciate her losing her job, because she has really sacrificed for the whole nation, and especially the Sham Sharma show.
Genuinely has.
Gave us a few good laughs there. Okay, on to something more serious. The survey at the Gyanvapi Mosque was concluded yesterday, I think, and a shivling came to have been found in the premises. So, what are the thoughts of you gentlemen? And before I ask you individually, there was something I found in an article by Indian Express. Surprise, surprise. So maybe you can comment on that. It says it is written by a gentleman called Fahad Zubairi. And this is how it opens. It says, what was being searched for since the violent slogan, Ayodhya to jhanki hai, Kashi Mathura baki hai, was exclaimed, has been found. No, not the shivling that the petitioners of the lawsuit filed in a Varanasi civil court alleged to have found in the Wuzu Khana of the Gyanvapi Mosque. What has been found, or rather created, is a rupture in the wall that separates the modern constitutional democracy of India from its ancient and medieval polity. The polity characterized by expansionist warfare and legitimized by the divine instead of the values of modernity. Okay, what do you make of this?
I mean, what else is that but just the same hogwash we've been listening to since 2014, ever since Modi got elected. The amazing thing about Indian democracy is that Indian democracy was completely fine and healthy during 1975. Indian democracy was fine and healthy during the Sikh massacre in Delhi. Indian democracy was completely fine during the Kashmiri Hindu genocide. But Indian democracy bloody died overnight as soon as Modi got elected. So that's the amazing thing about the health of the Indian democracy that you need to know. So that I don't, we can't put too much stock in that stuff as well. You have freedom indexes right now where India, which is a bloody miracle of democracy, if you look at India's neighborhood, India has like 150th rank or something like that. India is considered a partly free country. Countries like Turkey and bloody Somalia are ahead of India in those bloody indices. So, it's very difficult to put any kind of serious stock into those kinds of indices and those kinds of statements. As far as the demand for
good fight, is this a good fight? Is my question. If we want to characterize this as a fight,
yes, 100%, 100%.
So when you say
happened, go ahead.
So when you say a good fight, I just had needed clarification. What do you mean when you say good fight?
Well, I think first of all, a lot of people view. I mean, the people in the other side of the camp. I'm saying, feel like one encounters a lot of people who Hindus, if Hindu he knows. Who will come and tell you that, is this necessary? Do we need to? Abhi Ayodhya to mil gaya. Abhi ye kya hai? Ye kya naya kaan shuru kiya hai? Already the country is on the boil. Look how everybody's becoming polarized. The usual sense of kind of, do we really need this? Let's get on with our lives. So my question is, then it seems like a fight. Then it feels like you're egging on, you're bashing on about something. Is it even relevant? Should we then be happy with Ayodhya and say, chalo, okay, we made a point. Let's forget. So that's what I mean.
Okay, I got it. Well, this sounds like, this argument sounds like that old uncle argument, right? Where is like, beta, paisa to haathon ka mail hai, beta, kya karega tu? It's a kind of an argument. So like, theek hai, tere liye relevant nahi hai, tu side mein baith ja. Majority country ke liye relevant hai. So like today itself, I wrote this, like, if I was to come across one of the most grotesque things in my life at a personal level, it is Indian secularism. I think it is the most grotesque form of governing a society. Complete negationism and denialism of India's past. You just can't allow that and expect people to not push. You keep doing it. What the hell were you expecting? And again, even in this Gyanvapi Mosque case, what are they expecting? What is going to happen? They think people, and what hurts me the most, like, are we not going to talk about the fact that a huge number of the community was doing wuzu there while they knew it was a Shivalinga?
Exactly.
मतलब हम इसके बारे में बात भी नहीं कर सकते. ये तो वही है ना, बिग बॉस वाली आंटी थी जिसने बोला था तोड़ा कुत्ता टॉमी साडा कुत्ता कुत्ता काइंड ऑफ अ थिंग कि मतलब तुम्हारी इमोशंस है, हमारी इमोशंस की कोई वैल्यू है क्या? मतलब दिस इज रिडिकुलस. Are we not even allowed to discuss that? Look, I might be a disbeliever. I will never disrespect any religious symbol.
Exactly.
I will never disrespect any religious symbol. I have been on record stating that atheists who, lick Bibles, hump Qurans, and do all sorts of things to, Hindu idols or other pagan idols or stuff like that, I find that kind of atheism grotesque. It is just not my way. And then you are telling me that you are doing wuzu at a place. I refuse to believe they did not know it. I refuse to believe that.
Of course, they know. The Kashi Vishwanath temple, which is what is supposed to be the holiest pilgrimage site for Hindus. I've been there. There were guards, heavily guarded. This was in 2011, heavily guarded area, and then you're directed. The Hindus go in a line there, at least in those days, back in 10 years ago, and then you're directed away from the temple because I didn't know. I had no idea that there was a mosque over there. And the temple is not where the temple is actually supposed to be because the deity is placed away from where he was originally located. And then there is a mosque right there where the azan used to be read out.
Yeah, Abhijit and I were having a chat unofficially on WhatsApp में हम लोग बात कर रहे थे. I think Abhijit used the perfect line, not an inch. Not an inch. इसमें तो नहीं देंगे. एक इंच नहीं देंगे.
एक इंच भी नहीं देना. And mind you, we're atheists here. Okay, well, I won't use the word atheist because that has a certain Western connotation to it. But we're Hindu Nastics, which is it's a kind of non-offensive. It isn't perpetually angry and opposing. It's not proselytizing atheism in that sense, right? It's a self-confident atheism where you don't need to put it on display. But I am very clear on this. कि अयोध्या तो बस झांकी है, काशी मथुरा बाकी है. Okay, not 1 inch. Okay, now remember there is something particularly irritating about all of this is that with Ayodhya you were always told where is the proof, where is the proof, where is the proof. Here you have bucket loads of proof. I mean, you don't even need the proof because it's right there in front of you.
Correct, exactly.
And suddenly it is that history must not be used to oppress.
Now the narrative changes. Correct.
Now the narrative changes completely.
Yeah.
Right. So it's constant goalpost shifting out there. Now there is this thing, there is this rumor based on what Vivekananda and people said that Jagannath Puri temple was somehow Buddhist or Shabarimala was Buddhist.
Yeah.
Now, remember Vivekananda's statement and the statements regarding the Kerala government, actually, the communist government actually said it was a Buddhist structure before it became Shabarimala proper. These are all based on suppositions by certain scholars of their times. Okay, but I have no issue. If you want to dig and find that there is something under that, go ahead, dig, and I support that.
Correct.
My issue is what is sacred to you right now. So, for example, why I oppose the demolition or shifting of the Qutub Minar is you have no memory of those 24 Jain temples out there. You have no memory of, you have no emotional attachment to it. It's just that you found statues which you all know they were broken to make it, and therefore you want to break it down. Sorry, that doesn't work. Okay. Whereas in the case of Ayodhya, Mathura, and Kashi, there is still that memory, there is that historical attachment to it.
Correct.
In the case of Marthand, also there is that historical attachment. Of course, Marthand is a completely different case. But in these three cases, there is that historical attachment. There is that knowledge that this was yours. There is that veneration of it. And there is that continued worship of it, which is why these three are in a completely different category. Now, if you say that this needs to be expanded to every other this thing, just because a statue is found there, that is not the argument being made.
Right.
Yep.
Now, you tell me, where is the culture of veneration of Shabarimala or something around or within Shabarimala or Jagannath Puri
Buddhists.
currently amongst Buddhists?
Yeah.
There is none. So, it's kind of, it's a non-issue, but they're very good at, fudging the lines and coming up with false equivalences to muddy the waters.
But the Places of Worship Act, now that's
So
something
I
that-
just have to add something. I love the fact that the left is doing this.
Hmm.
Now let us extend this logic and talk about all 40,000 structures. ठीक है, सारे खोल दो, चलो सारे खड्डे खोदो, सारे निकालो, ठीक है, जिसका हुआ उसको वापस दे दो, कुछ बचेगा ही नहीं इस देश में, कुछ बचेगा नहीं। मैं ये तो गोवा में कुछ बचने वाला है? आपको लगता है गोवा में चर्चों ने नहीं ये काम किया हुआ
अरे
है?
बहुत
Yeah.
सारे, हाँ।
आपको लगता है पोर्तुगीजों ने नहीं काम किए हुए? आपको मतलब देखो ऐसा है ना कि द लेफ्ट बाय डूइंग दिस, वो बोलता है ना कि वो कौन सा वो घटिया सा जोक था, अपनी कब्र क्यों खोद रहा है गालिब, ला फावड़ा मुझे दे मैं खोदता हूँ, काइंड ऑफ थिंग। वो लोग अपनी कब्र खुद ही खोदने वाले हैं, हम नहीं उनके लिए फावड़ा देंगे, उनको खोदने दो अपनी कब्र। द मोमेंट दे गिव दिस आर्ग्यूमेंट, आई से ओके, dig everything, but then each and every claim, we can start with Sitaram Goel's work and
Yeah.
Arun Shori's work of Hindu temples, what happened to them. There are 2 volumes, and then we extend it to every single site in India. Sabko khodo, bada maja aayega.
True. But I was just going to say that this Places of Worship Act is a pretty controversial piece of legislation, and again very convenient for the other side, because they say that you would have read about this particular act, right? And I think there's a PIL that was filed against it. So this comes in very handy at a time like this, when they say that, look, after 1947, whatever is the structure, that's what it's going to be, and you can't claim to what the structure could have been before 1947.
No, but there is another thing along with the Places of Worship Act. There is something called the Ancient Monuments and Archaeological Sites and Remains Act too, of
Okay.
1958. So again, people have to be very careful as to what exactly this act is. From what I have understood is every case is going to be different. Ayodhya eventually was settled as a title suit, as a property suit, right? The court did not consider, which is very interesting and shocking to me, because the archaeological evidence of 1,000 pages was just glaring and overwhelming. But in this case, this is not a property dispute. I don't know. Say today, did you notice Justice Chandrachud's observation? He has stayed it, but what did he say? He said, they have found a shivling, now we have to protect that area. Justice Chandrachud has categorically said you have to protect that area now. Well, you found a shivling now.
But the Muslims can continue to do their spitting.
They can pray outside.
Around the area, but not in it.
They can't do wuzu now. They can't do wuzu.
Okay.
Because it's found in that wuzu area. So the interesting bit about this whole episode is, how are we going to build on this? This is going to be a legal cluster F, if I was to say. We have to come up with new ways of interpreting this. And look, best of luck to everyone who's going to tell, especially in the Ayodhya, Kashi, Mathura. These are cases where, I don't know how to say it, but by Hindu give up to nahi karne wale.
And what's important to understand.
The Ayodhya case was settled on the faith issue, right? Subramaniam Swamiji had come up with this. And he
title. It was a
Title
property title suit, and it was settled as a title suit eventually in the court. So it had nothing to do with faith. Over here, I think it is going to be that what if that Shivalingam is carbon dated, and it carbon dates to say 400 years, 500 years ago. What is it doing there? Is the court going to say, oops, the court can't do that then? So,
and the thing is, what's important to remember here also is that with issues like the Ram Janmabhoomi Mandir, the Kashi and Mathura, this is very dear to Hindus, and this is where Hindutva comes in, where if you remember the Ram Janmabhoomi movement was not a Kayasth movement or a Baniya movement or a Brahman movement or a this movement.
Yes.
It was a genuinely Hindu movement. Every single caste, every single bloody subcaste in India was involved. Every single one said ki hamara caste nahi matter karta, we want these temples back. This is exactly what is going to happen with Kashi and Mathura as well. And so, yeah, this is not a situation in which I can ever see the Hindus backing down, and nor should they.
Fantastic. We shouldn't also. I think we should really dig our heels in and say, sorry, boss, not happening. Yeah. And I think it's going to leave whatever the rest of the world has to say. And I think the rest of the world is watching as they watched Ayodhya. I think it's going to send a very, very clear message out. And I think very, very, very important for us to ensure that we give that message out loud and clear. So, okay, my question is Modi ji and Yogi ji, your thoughts on these two individuals, very quick sort of.
Ask Abhijit, because it's going to be more fun if you ask Abhijit.
Abhijit ji, let's start with you.
Ask Abhijit.
Look, Modi's turned out to be a big disappointment for me. All right.
Okay.
He's not economically right-wing enough. He's not, as a very wise person once said, it's not a BJP government. It's an IAS, IFS government with outside support from the BJP. And the problem with empowered bureaucrats is that you're not seeing high-level corruption, but you're seeing a lot of intense harassment and corruption at the lower levels. Incredible nepotism. You can't actually, because remember, in this country, most corruption, which is a crime of commission, is hidden as incompetence, which is considered an error of omission. It is not criminalized, right? So you look at the way things are being dealt, they're not particularly good. There's a great love and propensity for mediocrity out here because anybody with a even remote sense of flamboyance or whatever that takes away from dear leader is considered a threat to dear leader. All the ministers are powerless. It's all micromanaged from one spot. It's not the optimal way. I mean, I genuinely thought it was going to be different.
Insecure though,
but it's also been a lot of worrying tendencies. When the labor laws, the first initial labor laws that came out with certain hire and fire elements, they got shelved. When the land law rationalization came out, the opposition got its act together and that got shelved. All the big ticket reforms have been put on hold. The farm law, complete reversal. On internal security, what you find is they never get ahead of the narrative. They allow the entire situation to blow up, and then they're on a perpetual back foot. Remember, when was 370 abrogated? In 2019, early 2019, May, almost exactly to the year. August 2019, I think. So it's almost going to be 3 years now. In 3 years, you haven't been able to deconflict the economy. It's still all the thugs and the terror funders who are still in charge of the economy and things like that. There's deep problems out here. Now, I love Yogi. He is as uncompromising as I remember Narendra Modi was when he was Chief Minister.
In Gujarat, correct.
In Gujarat. My issue is that Yogi shows the same lack of an institutional approach and too much of a personalized approach, which makes everything dependent on an individual rather than creating institutions behind it, which for me is very problematic. Now, I should have known this because, when I used to teach political Islam long back in Australia, the classic example of never trusting an individual but trusting institutions was Khomeini. Because, after Khomeini comes, he promises all these things. He goes back on all the promises and he ends up being a much worse repressor than the Shah at his worst possible time.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Now, I should have known that, but, it was the brief suspension of disbelief. This is one of the reasons I don't like all these touchy-feely, smoochy vernacular movies. And I can never bring myself to suspend my disbelief for them, is precisely because of this. We thought that institutions would be created. In fact, the only person that's actually doing institutional changes is somebody who came from the Congress who understands these things, which is Himanta Biswal Sarma. But he's not from the RSS. So therefore, but of course, Yogi is also not technically RSS. Let's see. Let's just say the BJP is too weak on security and too personalized. I don't like this kind of personalization and worship of dear leader, supreme leader, whatever. I've seen enough of that in North Korea. I don't want that happening in India.
But is it really is it, sorry to interrupt, Abhijit, but is it really that sycophantic with him, around him? That
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, you look at every minister's timeline, it's cringe. Everything is Adarniya Modi ji.
Listen, to be honest though, this I'm going to say something that maybe people are not going to like. I'm going to say something that people aren't going to like, but I think the problem is, Abhijit, that Indians have a higher level of cringe than the rest of the world, right? Indians are more cringe than the rest of the world. Indians in general are a lot more cringe.
Look at me, I'm going on GG on you right now.
We're bigger.
क्रिंज को कुछ बोलना नहीं, हमारा पूरा चैनल क्रिंज के ऊपर चलता है मीम रिव्यू में.
Exactly. So we're bigger producers of cringe. We're bigger producers of cringe. We're bigger consumers of cringe, and we have much greater cringe tolerance to the point where cringe is actually not cringe. Cringe is the normal state of being.
Cringe is India. India is cringe.
Yeah, exactly.
The thing is that I think the thing is that I mean the sabhyata goes overboard sometimes, right? This whole Adarniya ji and that whole reverential attitude. It's kind of ingrained.
It reminds me of that AG, OG, Loji, Sunoji, Mehuman, Moji.
I don't know what you just said, but I agree. Yes.
So okay, I've got Abhijit ji's views on. Let's go to you, Shamji. What about you? What do you think?
Listen, man, I've liked Modi. I'll continue to like Modi because of what he was able to achieve something. And Abhijit understands these issues with Modi much better than I do. And I do tend to agree with a lot of what he has said as well. But on the other side of the coin, I'll also always be, grateful to him for providing, I think, a platform or creating a situation that Indians honestly didn't think was possible, or at least people like me didn't think was possible. When the Ram Mandir judgment could have come at any time, but it at the end of the day came under the Modi government. And I remember very distinctly, my dad called me that day and he was like, Sham, मेरे को नहीं लगता था मेरे जीते जी ये राम मंदिर का decision आने वाला है या फिर ये राम मंदिर बनने वाला है. Now you can make a point, and I'd probably agree with you that Modi had nothing to do with it. But look, again, I don't think this decision comes if the Modi government wasn't there. I would say the same thing with 370. Yes, I agree. After the abrogation of 370, the situation has been bungled. But again, that happened.
Yes.
A situation has been created in the country where the common Indian feels safe to express their opinions about their culture and take a certain level of pride in their culture that wasn't there before. Films like the Kashmir Files are coming out. Films like Uri, Tanhaji.
Even within the armed forces, there is a new kind of, there's a shot in the arm, right? I mean, he's right there in the trenches. I mean, not literally in the trenches, but he goes and looks them up. He, distributes sweets, and which prime minister has done that?
I think he understands. This is a guy that, for all of his faults, he understands symbolism. He understands symbols very, very well. And because of that, he has been able to create a sense of pride in India that really didn't, didn't exist before, or if it existed, it was, hidden by people. लोग छुपा कर रखते थे, लोग दिखाते नहीं थे क्योंकि उनको डर लगता था. This pride would be ridiculed.
If you're a majority, you shouldn't be speaking out. If you're a majority, you should be stepping aside and giving the other guy the way. If you're the majority, you take the fall. This is a psychology that has been so deeply, hammered into us. That,
and again, to an extent, even the online content that might be coming out, I'm not saying it's thanks to Modi ji, but I am saying it's thanks to an environment that was created where people feel safe and people feel empowered to be able to express these opinions. I don't think the content creators, I don't live in India, so I have that advantage. But I think a lot of the content creators that live in India and are creating sort of non-left based content, they would not be able to say the things that they're saying. They would not be able to be as honest as they're being if the Congress government was in power. I can guarantee you that. And
Yes.
look, the BJP is just as bad, if not worse, on free speech as the Congress party. I agree. But I still think that certain, a large percentage of the population feels a lot more empowered and safe than they would have otherwise.
And Yogi ji, what about Yogi ji? What are your thoughts?
Yogi ji, I basically agree with Abhijit on that, because I think Yogi is, 2004 Modi, essentially. He's a lot stronger on law and order.
Yes.
He's a lot better in terms of like administration, things like that. And I am, just like Abhijit, I am intrigued by somebody like in Hemant Biswa Sarma as well, because he's garnering a pretty big support base on social media. I keep getting comments on my YouTube videos about, oh, please talk about Hemant Biswa Sarma. Yogi to hai, theek hai, Yogi hai, very good, but talk about him as well. So I don't know if the BJP would ever, give the top job to somebody who came from outside, from Congress. I don't know if that'll ever happen. But who knows if he can make himself an unstoppable force?
You can't.
I don't know.
Exactly. You can't look away from that.
Kushal understands BJP better than I do, so he can probably give you a better answer on the Hemant Biswa Sarma thing. But I think, I find him a very interesting character.
What are your thoughts, Kushal ji?
Well, everything that has happened, the credit goes to Narendra Modi, and here is the reason why. In 2014, if there was any other person fighting on the BJP ticket, BJP would have not gotten the number of seats that it did. That those seats were not given to BJP; those seats were given to Narendra Modi. Again, in 2019, the number of seats were given to Narendra Modi, not to BJP. This is the fact of life. The things that the BJP, through parliamentary functions and many other things, has been able to achieve is through the sheer weight of the number of seats they have gotten in the parliament.
Correct. Which is because of him.
Which is because of him. So everything that has happened has literally become because of him. Everything bad that happens is also because of him, but everything good that has happened is literally happened. You remove the Modi-Shah combination from the top and you will get a reality check, political reality check, that you will realize how, India is a personality-driven society. अब क्या करें? अबे हैं.
Everyone is, यार. US में Trump जीता ना अभी. Everyone is personality driven.
Point ये है कि आपके जो भी चेंज हुए हैं, वो चेंजेस से तो कभी भी हम सेटिस्फाइड नहीं होने वाले. ना मैं हूं, ना अभिजीत है, ना श्याम है, और हम क्रिटिसाइज करते हैं. मगर ये अपने दिमाग में अपने पल्ले बांध लो कि ये जो भी हो रहा है, आप पर्सनालिटी चेंज कर दो नरेंद्र दामोदर दास मोदी से किसी को भी, आपकी सीटें गिर जाती हैं, आपकी टेनेसिटी गिर जाती है, आपकी बहुत चीजें गिर जाती हैं. आप इवेंचुअली यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड आएगा, लिख के ले लेना, आएगा. वो या स्टेल्थ से आएगा, जिसमें क्या होगा कि हर रिलीजन के मिसोजिनिस्टिक लॉज चेंज हो जाएंगे, जैसे हिंदू कोड बिल हुआ है. तो वो यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड ही हो गया ना. अभी नाक ऐसे पकड़ो कि ऐसे पकड़ो, हमको तो काम से मतलब है, काम से मतलब है. दूसरा, राम जन्मभूमि के लिए आपका पॉलिटिकल वेट. दूसरा, are we going to lie to ourselves that state elections में मोदी factor is 0?
No. It is, he has to. He comes in personally to all these places unless and until
it is there. The state leadership matters, but Modi adds those last 20 seats, 30 seats that make it a solid victory in those states.
Yeah.
That's the so that matters.
Let me just add something more to this. I agree with Kushal and I disagree with Kushal. For the battle at Kurukshetra to happen, it didn't just require Arjuna and Krishna, it required a Duryodhana. Without Duryodhana, there was no Kurukshetra.
Rahul Gandhi.
Exactly. So remember, BJP was a 130 to 140 seat party. Okay. Maximum, I would say, Narendra Modi took it to a 210, 220 party.
Correct.
The person who made it a 272 plus and a 303 party is Rahul Gandhi. It is not Modi by himself. It is the combination of Modi and Rahul Gandhi that make this possible.
True.
Okay. Remember, in the past, who did they have? What record of good governance did Vajpayee have to float on?
Well, a
He
lot
was
of
a,
Atal Bihari Vajpayee as a, as an
I
example.
mean, yeah, but
Somebody
it
who's
was all
poetic at the same time.
exactly. He didn't have that tough man image about him that Narendra Modi cultivated.
Yes.
Plus, remember, who was he up against? He was up against in a pre-media world, because at that time, media hadn't completely liberalized the way it has today.
Yes.
He was up against the mystique of the Gandhi family. Okay. Now, that ended where you have the social media revolution. What social media does is, you know what they say, no hero is ever a hero to his own valley. And what social media did is it overexposed everyone to the point it destroys mystique. It made everyone every hero's valley. So that charm is no longer there. So social media added to it, Rahul Gandhi added to it, and Modi added to it. I would say that from that 140 to 272, it was 33%, 33%, 33%, 33% Modi, 33% Rahul Gandhi, 33% this thing. Advani was no match for Modi in that sense. Advani versus Rahul, not really a match. Modi, on the other hand, does portray youth comparatively. Comparatively. And experience, as opposed to Rahul Gandhi's bratish behavior and things like that. And remember, it was social media that exposed that bratish behavior.
Correct.
The thing that really went against him was tearing that. I mean, Manmohan Singh might be your knocker, but he's the prime minister of the country. You show him respect. You can't behave like this. Okay. So I don't think it was entirely Modi either.
Well, I think point well taken. I think it was a combination of several factors, and but then again, I think one can't deny that the man has some chutzpah and a certain sense of integrity, tremendous integrity, or whatever I can tell, and a lot of other qualities that I think were sorely missing in our so-called leaders for a very, very long time. So I think we should give him some credit for that. But points well taken. Anything else anybody would like to add there? Or I think we could, it's been about close to 2 hours. So I'd like to.
Well, I would like to, add something. We are ending the show. Obviously, you invited all three of us together because we were, we are part of this thing that we do every Thursday. So
you are a trio.
Yeah. So maybe a message to everybody, on behalf of all three of us, I'm saying, like, we really appreciate all the love that has been showered to the show. I'll give you a small anecdote. Abhijit and I were having dinner in Mumbai, and suddenly out of the blue, somebody pops up and, that person says, "Arey, my wife is a huge fan of the show," and it's like his biggest disappointment was Sham nahi udhar. He's like, "Where is Sham?" I was like, "Kya abhi hum tino apne haath pakad ke har jagah thodi na ghumte hain." So small things like that, it means a lot to us, and we mock our own viewers mock us.
Correct.
And it is not lost on us that the kind of love and affection that we have, and I just thought, maybe I will speak on behalf of all three of us here and say that we appreciate all the love, and keep making fun of us, keep insulting us in the meme reviews. We really look forward to all the jibes on us, and maybe that's what makes us three work, because we don't take ourselves seriously and we always make fun of each other.
So I think that's kind of I think the hallmark and the unique selling point of your show is because you obviously wear your you take yourself very not lightly, but you don't take yourselves too seriously either, and or anything that seriously. But what is important is you talk about everything with a lot of there's information, there's knowledge, there's research. And it's balanced. It's a balanced discourse, and that's what
we spare no one, including ourselves.
Correct. So, so it's not just entertaining, but it's also informative. So it's it's fun watching you guys. I have to say myself that I'm a huge fan, and it's been a thrilling moment to have had all three of you on this episode of Vaishali Dialogues, and I hope to have more of you in the days to come. talking about things that matter and having a few laughs along the way. So love to have you sometime again in the future. Thank you so much. Shamji, I'm sure you're just waking up. The rest of us are going to go to sleep now.
Yeah, my day is starting now.
Yeah, I know. So thank you so much, Kushalji, Shamji, Abhijitji. It's been an absolute delight talking to you, you three gentlemen, and Shubhratri to the two of you, and good morning to you, Shamji. Bye-bye. Namaste.
Thank
Good night. Thank you.
To our subscribers, please continue subscribing to us, share our content, like, comment, and do come back. Thank you. Namaste. Bye-bye.
Namaste. We hope you enjoyed this Citti Media content. Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.